Mohamed Salah looks set to quit Anfield as early as January following controversial post-match comments over the weekend in which he claimed he was thrown under a bus by Liverpool. Let's get straight into it. Jordan, why has he said what he said?
Well, it's hard to pinpoint, to be honest. I mean, it feels like a very emotional reaction to being benched, for the third time in a row, which is the first time in his Liverpool career that's happened. And it is shocking. We can't deny the timing of it. I think that the words he's used, the language he's used in these comments are absolutely awful. And I've seen already some mixed reactions, which we'll get into. You've got some Liverpool fans going, he's entitled to say that, he's earned the right to say it. But this is awful PR, however you spin it. Like, there is absolutely zero benefit to what he said for the club, for the manager, for the board. So my initial reaction to his outburst is it's an emotional reaction after not just not playing, but also them not winning the game and bottling a lead. But really, I'd probably describe it as selfish, quite frankly, because it's a really, really bad look for Liverpool right now at probably the worst time when they really didn't need it. So my initial reaction is one of just, I think he's selfish, to be honest.
I think you've got to look at sort of other external factors because Jamie Carragher had kind of called him out for not speaking out in recent weeks, and he's saying, "Well, Salah, we heard from Salah when he wanted a contract, but we're not hearing from him now that the form's sort of dropped." So he has spoken out, and he did mention Jamie Carragher in his sort of interview. Um, the thing I find weirdest about this is the timing of it, because this time next week he will be gone for AFCON, so he won't be in contention to be picked for Liverpool. He'll be away, and Liverpool have got to deal without him anyway. That's what I find the most interesting because I kind of agree with you, Jordan, where it's come from a selfish standpoint because I think it's in order for him to make a move because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. You just sort of go, right, I'm here for another week. It's not going well. I'm just going to shut up for a week, go off to AFCON and deal with it when I come back. And that's what I think most people would do if they wanted to stay. But by the time AFCON is done, the January transfer window is going to be about. So that's the reasoning why I think he's done this. Plus, I think he's also protecting himself because Liverpool dropping points again shows he's not the only problem of Liverpool being completely different to last season. He was a big part of why Liverpool was so good last year. Him dropping form, but it's not just him. So I think he's covering his back as well by being like, I'm being thrown under the bus. I'm not getting put on the pitch now because apparently I was the problem. And look, we're still not winning games. So that's why I think he's done it now. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that he's done it. He's done it so close to leaving for AFCON.
Yeah. I think as well, is he even right in what he's saying at all? Because I've not seen much. Obviously, everyone's saying, look, Salah's out of form. He's obviously not in anyone's FPL team anymore. Like, there is a narrative that he's dropped off. But when you look at his age, when you look at what he did last season, no one expected him to have as good a season. And I've not seen anyone exclusively blame Salah. So I do think he's lost his head a little bit as well. And maybe it's a bit narcissistic in a way where he thinks it's all about him and it's really not about him at all. Because Van Dijk's dropped off, I've said a million times. And if you're going to point blame, you're either pointing the blame at the manager or the all the new signings who so far, with the exception of Ekatike, have been an absolute shit show. I think that's who people are blaming, not Salah.
Well, let's have a look at what he has said. So these comments came after they drew with Leeds at the weekend, which he was on the bench for once again. And he said, just breaking it down relatively quickly, I've done so much for this club down the years and especially last season. Now I'm sitting on the bench and I don't know why. It seems like the club has thrown me under the bus. This is how I'm feeling. I think it's very clear that someone wanted me to get out or to get all of the blame. He also went on to say that I said many times that I had a good relationship with the manager, and all of a sudden, we don't have a relationship. I don't know why, but it seems to me, how I see it, that someone doesn't want me in the club. So he's thrown a lot of shade here. If anything, it sounds like he's thrown Liverpool under a bus more than himself. Um, but he's criticised, clearly made a dig at his, looks like his teammates. He made a dig, obviously, at the manager. Is there a way back for Salah from these comments? Because it's likely that Brighton could be his last game at the weekend because he'll head off to AFCON and then there might be where they work out a deal to get him out the door. Is there a way back from him from this? Do you expect him to apologise or would you think do you think this is boiling point now?
It's so hard. It's so hard because there is going to still be that portion of the Liverpool fan base who are like, he's earned the right to make those comments. Like if you look back at his stats for Liverpool, he kind of has earned the right to have an opinion, but no, it's the case with every football club. No one player is bigger than the club, and that's what it comes down to. But I think as well, his comments again. Look, most of this could probably be solved with an apology, right? But his comments of specifically saying about Arne Slot, he doesn't have a relationship with him anymore. Obviously, one that suggests something's going on at the club based on what we saw last season. Anyway, that kind of there could be some indication of why Liverpool's struggling. But for him coming back, he's really going to have to apologise to the manager and his teammates and the fans in one go. Which I don't know. I think that's a bit of a big pill to swallow. So I don't actually know is the honest answer.
I mean, this should have been done privately. Don't
100%.
you think? Done
It's,
privately,
it's, it's
training
ridiculous.
ground, let him have it out. I mean, to come out, like you said, he goes quiet all this time and then he comes out with this.
Honestly, I do think it's easy for him to come back because he's done so much for Liverpool. Sort of, if he comes, let's say, he plays against Brighton, goes and scores a hat trick, Liverpool fans won't care. Like the problem is him going to AFCON. I think if like I said, it's about the timing of it. If he wasn't going to AFCON and then he goes and plays plays Brighton next weekend, scores a hat trick, plays the next game, they win. He may not score, but he's back in the team. People will forget fairly quickly because that's just the way football is these days. But because he's going away, he's also being left out of the Inter Milan squad, by the way. They've got Inter Milan midweek for the Champions League, and he's being left out of the squad now because of these comments. Which, to be honest, I actually think is the right approach from Liverpool. It's kind of... you may even do it for the Brighton game and just be like, come back from AFCON. Like, we'll talk about it behind the scenes. Come back after AFCON and we'll deal with it then. But for me, yeah, I think he can come back from this because he's done a lot for Liverpool. The fans still will love him because, he's brought back Premier League titles to Liverpool. He's been massive for him. Like last season, he was the best player in the league, scored a stupid amount of goals and was, the focal point of it. And this is the reason why I think it's happened and people are blaming him. Because when you compare Liverpool of last year to this year, the big drop-off is Salah. There are other players who have dropped off, but because Salah hit such big heights, his drop of form is massive. And that's why I think it's so noticeable for the Liverpool side. But he's not the only one to blame.
Well, this is it. It's like Liverpool have underperformed all season. And like you're expecting Salah, to be fair, to win them games when they're not performing well. He did that at Burnley, but I don't recall him really doing that. So he has been right to come under scrutiny. And also the club has changed tactically. Slot is bringing in his style of play, which requires Salah to probably do a little bit more running back and also doing a little bit more, assisting, instead of scoring goals. So he's limiting himself. And I think that causes an issue. But, Liverpool have lost 6 games already in the league this season when they only lost 4 last season. And most of those come when they'd already won the league. And I agree with you, if it should be Konate that should be dropped, probably, because let's be honest, he's been poor. He allowed Leeds back into the game at the weekend. Salah wouldn't have allowed Leeds back into the game. I think Salah would have probably scored against Leeds at the weekend. Verts, of course, is the one everybody's talking about, but he's still being integrated in some capacity, so maybe you can leave him alone. What happens though if when he goes to AFCON, Liverpool start winning? Is he
Well,
gonna go? That's how I see it, because they picked up 5 points in a week where he's been dropped, right? West Ham away, Sunderland at home, and then Leeds away. So last season that would have been 9 points. It's five, and in their current state of form, you'd probably argue that that's pretty decent, in the teams they've played, particularly away from home. So what if they start picking up points when he goes? Is he going to be out the door in January because of it?
yeah, this is probably the funniest thing of the whole scenario, right? He said he's been hung out to dry, thrown under a bus, been called a scapegoat, which I don't actually think any of that is true. But ironically, now, the way he's gone about himself, if Liverpool do turn a corner and start turning into form and winning games now, he actually, ironically, will then become everything he believes he already is, but isn't. He will then become the scapegoat for Liverpool's entire season. He will be the problem and be seen as the problem in the dressing room, which sounds mental to say, but I assure you now, if Liverpool go and beat Inter Milan and beat Brighton, everyone will target Salah and be like, he's the reason, he's the problem. We don't, we know that's probably not true, but we know how football works and we know how football fans work. It will be a very, very easy scapegoat to say, get rid of Salah, he's the problem. And so, yeah, I actually think he could very well go. I don't think that's going to happen because Liverpool have been terrible. And if they're losing without him playing, him not being in the squad doesn't change anything. I think they'll lose to Inter Milan, to be honest. But it's if that happens, I could see him leaving 100%. But I still probably think an apology and reintegration still feels like the most likely thing.
Well, if you look at the three games that he's been out, they've played, they've played two promoted sides and not beaten either of them. One at home where they nearly lost, which is to Sunderland. Leeds away, like I'm not saying Leeds away is an easy game. You know that
Very tough,
with
very tough
Chelsea,
game.
but and City, to be honest, we had to score a 91st minute winner at home. But when you're saying, oh, Salah's out the team, nothing's changed. They beat a very poor West Ham side. They drew with Sunderland. Like I said, they could have lost that game at home and then drawn away where Salah didn't make the difference in that Leeds game. The reason why they drew had nothing to do with Salah being on or off the pitch. It came down to Konate being stupid, and it brought Leeds back into that game. Because if Konate doesn't make that tackle, Liverpool win that game probably comfortably because Leeds weren't in it. But you gave them a sniff of hope, they get back in it. Salah, but to the point is, let's say over AFCON they win their next 3 or 4 games, however long he's gone for. I still don't think it matters because it's a squad game. It matters having your whole squad there because a Gakpo, Ekitike could get injured. Salah's got to come back on. But it does for certain if Liverpool start winning games, Salah will be on the bench when he comes back, and that creates more negative media around it. It's sort of the media headlines will be like, when will Salah start again? And then he might start in an FA Cup game, the third round, whenever that is. I think that's in January. He might miss that. I'm not sure on the timings. But it's sort of like he'll play in one of them sort of games, and people are like, oh, now he's a second stringer. Is he performing in that game? And it can be a lot of bad PR around Liverpool, even if they are starting to win games. Salah brings that back when he comes off AFCON. So I think that's the biggest problem. Liverpool are going to kind of be damned if they win games and damned if they lose games. And that's not what you want around the club. And that I think is a massive problem for them.
So just then with about 3 questions or so I've got. So first of all, if you're Arne Slot, both of you, you've both got more hair, so you might need a haircut first. But if you're both Arne Slot, what would you do in this situation? Would you go full on Sir Alex Ferguson or Jose Mourinho, or would you be a little bit more level-headed on it. What would you do, Jamie?
I think it depends if you know if he's going or not. It is the real factor. If you're like, right, Salah's going to be staying till at least the end of the season. The summer transfer window could be a completely different factor. Let's say he's staying in January. I think you have to keep him. You have to try and make him happier. Maybe not fully happy, but you can't just let him sort of continue to act in that same way. You may have to. I don't think it's not like he's a terrible player overnight. So he should still be playing for Liverpool. Maybe not as much as he likes, but he should still be playing probably more than what he has been. So that's where I think it's more getting the balance properly right. But if you're Arne Slot, you've got to have a full-on conversation with him and be like, because for one, it's your form, Salah, has not been good enough, and that's why you're dropped. And explain to him, you can give him sort of, as a manager, you should be able to go to him, look, your form's dropped. Your form's dropped. You need to improve. As simple as that. That's why you're not starting this game. That's why you're not starting that game. The Leeds one, it's sort of like it was at 2-2 you could have brought him on, I think. But once Solskjaer scored the third goal, Salah's not coming on that pitch. You do not make that kind of substitution there. So it's more managing his expectations. But if he is leaving, don't care about him. Focus on absolutely everyone else. And if he's becoming that much of a bad apple, you sort of do kind of what you're saying with an Alex Ferguson. You drop him into the reserves, you drop him into the under-21s, and you go, we'll just get the money from you, get the money for you, or see you out the club. Because, like you sort of said, Jordan, no player is bigger than the club. And Liverpool are a very, very big club. So Salah's most certainly not bigger than that. And when his form's not been good enough, you can drop him. It just in a similar sort of term, Aguero for his final season at City, he barely played. He barely started any games. Now he had a bit of injuries, which he unfortunately was known for, but there was very few times where he could have done the exact same as what Salah did, but he didn't. He kept his mouth shut, and you just have to accept it in a certain way. And we got quite a nice ending for him where he got into his final game in the Premier League. He didn't actually start that game for his final ever game for City. Came on as a sub, scored two, and everyone sort of left with a nice moment with him. But with the Salah one, it looks like it's going to turn ugly, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, he's not quite at the end either. Aguero was more at the end of his career. Salah's not like last season he's still at the top level. So he doesn't see it as a retirement party. He sees it as I'm still at the top of my game.
Aguero did go to Barcelona, just putting it out there, after.
Yeah, I
So it
suppose,
wasn't
yeah.
the complete end of his career, but it was he knew it was
Yeah.
the end of him at City. So that's kind of what I mean with the end of Salah at Liverpool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I was Slot, I think I'd do the first stage that he's done. Don't put him in the squad for Inter. I wouldn't put him in the squad for Brighton either. I wouldn't make that whole game about him and whether he's leaving and waving at the crowd. I'd get rid of all that. Have a conversation with him now before he goes to AFCON. Work out what's going through his head. As I said, I think it is, he goes to AFCON, he has some time to cool down. He does a public apology and just say, look, I've been emotional. It's been a tough period for us. I love the club. I've sorted out with the manager. Let's go. And the fans will get back behind that. I think that's a very simple solution. Bottom line is he has acted selfishly. I actually don't think, the more I'm thinking about it, there's not actually a case I can make for him doing it other than being selfish. I don't think there's any argument. Makes the manager look bad, damages the club, bad PR, kind of damages the squad as well. So I actually don't think there's any benefit to what he's done. I think it is purely selfish. Um, Go on.
No, I was going to say, I think this is it. Is something must have been said, or something's been said behind the scenes, which has maybe triggered it. But that's the thing is, I know football's changed and players have more control, but I think Arne Slot is absolutely right. If I was on Slot to not take him to Inter on in the week, I think that's absolutely fair. Make that point, make that stance. We saw it with that time where what's his name? The Sarri dropped Kepa, didn't he, when he refused to came on? But I would speak to the leaders on the pitch. First of all, I wouldn't treat Salah any differently in training. I'd have him train with the first team, etc. But I would speak to the leaders. I'd speak to the Virgil van Dijks. I'd speak to the Andy Robertsons and see what they can get out of him. You know, if they want to give him a little bit of a bump in training, like a nudge in training to make sure it wasn't acceptable, or have him at least apologise to the group. I think would be the right, and then talk to him and give those reasons. Say, yeah, it has been unacceptable. However, look, I still think you're the best player in this squad. Let's try and work something out. If your heart's set on leaving in January, then we'll have to do that. But Slot really has to show his authority here because we can't let, as they say, the lunatics run the asylum. I think Slot, Salah's comments were immature, and I think he should know better. So it's an opportunity for him to, calm that down a bit now that maybe the dust is starting to settle. But do you both expect him to leave in January, or do you think Slot will be the one to leave first?
The more I think about it, it's more of a sort of a Salah power play to get rid of Slot because this is the time where Slot is under the most pressure. The form hasn't picked up. It slightly has picked up, but it's still under poor circumstances. So it's kind of a power play to be like, right, you've given me that contract in the summer. He's not doing it for us and for me. Get him out, get someone else in. So actually, it's kind of a 50-50, in my opinion, on who goes first. But if it's sort of like January, by the end of January, I expect one of them to go. My money probably would be on Salah because I think Saudi can come in and take him off Liverpool's hands. And I don't know who really is the replacement out there for Liverpool. So that's why I'm leaning more towards Salah. But like I say, I generally think it could be 50-50. But I'd be very surprised if both are there at the end of January.
I don't know. I feel like both could stay. I do feel like it could just be a bit of a toys out the pram and then it all recovers. But it is funny how it's played out because it is him ultimately saying to the board, who's more important? Or is he referring to the board when he says he's been thrown under the bus? I don't know. But what could have happened is Slot's brought in all these new players. They've spent a lot of money. We've got to remember that. Slot has tried to make his own formation, which is Salah out of his usual position. So he could have worsened the relationship with Salah over that and, had less involvement with him. And maybe Slot sees it as he is past it and he's not part of this new formation. Or Salah, as you said, Reece, to your point, he doesn't want to run back. He doesn't want to. He's been successful at Liverpool with the same formation pretty much. So he's probably looking at the manager going, hold on, we've just won the league. This has always worked for us. Now you've tried to change it and we're failing. Now you're dropping me. What are you doing? So I think it's just a combination of all those things in one. But Slot may see it as, look, Salah, you've had your best years. You don't want to, you're being a problem. The future of Liverpool is the signings we've made. Yes, they've not worked out so far, but you'd still back a lot of those players to turn good. So I don't know. It's a really weird one because the board might get involved and be like, who's more important? It's a really, really interesting power play.
Well, the board have already obviously backed Arne Slot, which indicates to me that I think Salah's going to go. And I think the board are right. I think, yes, Slot could maybe tactically tweak things so he maximizes Salah as much as possible. But that would mean there'd be a drop off from someone like Isaac and Ekiteke and maybe even Wirtz. We saw it with United. He gave more tactical flexibility to Ronaldo, which meant Rooney dropped off. But Rooney understood probably the assignment a little bit different than maybe what the other two might. But if it brings you success, who cares? At 33, they're not going to get huge money for him. So the Saudi League will pay for him. They won't pay probably what we were thinking a couple of years ago, but they'll get something. I think they have to back it. I draw a lot of similarities to the Arteta Aubameyang situation back from 2021-22, where Aubameyang, was making all the sounds about a new contract, got one, fell off a cliff. And we saw Arteta wasn't happy with him. He looked at reasons why he wasn't there. And the board backed Arteta, and they were right to. They had to give the Arteta the authority. If once you give a player an inch, they'll take a mile. And you can't let that become a circus and become what the club becomes known for. There are some clubs that are known for that, and it always seems to fail in the end. So they have to back Slot here, back his judgment. I think the players will back it as well. And it will also stamp a mark to those players that this behaviour is unacceptable. You have the choice. If you leave Liverpool, you're not going to get any better than Liverpool, which I think is true with a lot of those players. So that's my opinion on that. But where do we think his legacy will be now at Liverpool? Following these comments, is it dampened, or do you think he'll be welcomed back at Anfield with open arms? You know, when they bring him out with a scarf and have him sitting in the stands like Dalglish and Rush.
Well, if he leaves in Jan, I think it's going to be dampened personally. Like, I do think, yeah, coming out and then forcing your way out of the club with about a month's notice out of the blue after you've just signed a 2-year new deal, had the best season of your life, won the league, and then just going rogue because you didn't start 3 games and this club's struggling. I think that's a bit of a bottle job approach, personally. And it's taking the coward's way out. That's my opinion, anyway. Like, you know, you've not been good enough. Some of it's maybe a formation change. No one's really gone, oh, it's all on Salah. So I think he's making up that narrative in his own head, which is narcissistic. So yeah, if I'm a Liverpool fan, I'd be pretty annoyed right now. Regardless of what he's done, it is a very selfish move. And if he does force his way out, you're leaving the club struggling when you've not been good enough, playing the victim. So for me, yeah, I think that does dampen his legacy, unless the apology happens and all of that stuff we just said.
I don't. I disagree. I don't think it dampens it much because everyone knows it's at the end of his. It's coming to the end of his time. The only sort of slight dampen is if people go, right, you wanted a contract so badly and then you've left 6 months later. But I just think football fans won't care. You got to remember, like Salah's like, I think he's joint third in the most goals and assists in Premier League history. He's brought 2 Premier League titles to Liverpool, being, you know, the main man, if not second main man for the team in both them seasons. Brought Champions League. It's not one that I think fans will ultimately sort of go, right, he's now below, I don't know, I can't think of a Liverpool sort of player, but if you're thinking he's proper up there, he will still be up there. I just don't think it matters that much. It's kind of, you go, you know what, it's the end of your time. It's not gone perfectly, but it's not going to dampen that much. Fans will forget about it in a few years. And that's kind of how I sort of see it. I think it's going to be perfectly fine. Liverpool fans will still love him for what he's done.
Yeah, look how they've treated Trent.
I think that's completely different because he's forced himself out as a sort of, you know, a local Liverpool boy, supports the club, things like that, and he's gone, right, I want a better move. Salah's not doing it for a better move, going, Liverpool's beneath me. He's going because he's towards the end of his career. Trent still had several years. I think it's a completely different situation on that. In that, yeah, I think being a sort of Scouser growing up, he's meant to be a Liverpool boy through and through. And that's why I think it's completely different to what Salah. If Salah goes in January, I think it's completely different, and he won't be seen as that villain as what Trent is.
Yeah, I think if he was doing this at 27, 28, we're looking at a different legacy. We're seeing him do it at 33. Will he get his little moment against Brighton? I think he will. And I think he'll still be welcomed back with open arms. Do I think he's going to get a statue or some gates named after him at Liverpool? No, I don't. I don't. That's not a criticism of him. I just think that for some reason at Liverpool, real special occasions, they give those out. They don't hand those out like sweets. You know, that they're quite rightly given to the likes of Shankly and Paisley. So, you know, even Klopp, I think he'll get one eventually. But yeah, I think he's going to go in January, and I think his legacy is overall positive. You know, he's been there for 8 seasons, 8 years. a lot of people, he was unfancied when he came in, and he become arguably the best player in the world in that position at one stage. So I think it's a lot of to look back on what he's offered, and because it's so negative, it's probably like atmosphere at the moment. It's best to let him go now, so the club can build, and move on with a style of play that suits them, you know, and they can produce more players out of that. And I think, yeah, it's about both parties looking forward rather than backwards. So there we go. They're the closing thoughts for today. Thank you all for putting up with my cold, but we want to hear from you, Liverpool fans, Everton fans, Saudi fans, wherever you are. We want you to leave comments on what you think of the Salah situation is. Is it justified? Is it not? Are you Slot? Are you team Slot? Are you team Salah? Doesn't matter. We want to hear from you. We're all about football debates here on this podcast. So make sure you leave comments on YouTube. Anything we've got on social media as well, make sure you respond to those. And yeah, we'll see you again next week.